Hey everybody, welcome back to Journey to VR. So the last time I talked to you guys, I showed you the finished results of my first VR experience, and this was done using the Unreal Engine, and it was a room scale experience that was delivered on the Vive. This week what I want to show you is a 360-degree rendered version of that same project. So obviously this is a bit more accessible. You could view it on a website or on a mobile device using the iPhone app or the Android app from YouTube. So it's pretty awesome. And I did this using Arnold 5. Arnold 5 just came out. It's got tons of new features. It's super, super cool. It's much faster than it used to be. You can get away with lower samples than you used to. And it's got awesome new shaders and a really cool new VR camera. It's also worth mentioning that Arnold 5 is now the default renderer inside of both Maya as well as 2018 release of 3ds Max. So everyone has Arnold 5, the new shaders, as well as the new VR camera, which is really, really exciting. So let me just jump into Maya and walk you through my setup now. So what we've got going on here is we've got the photogrammetry environment. I've scattered around a few area lights, and I also have a sky dome around the outside that's giving my indirect illumination. Now for the walls, what I'm doing is I'm using that new standard surface shader, which is a great shader. It's a physically accurate shader that has the ability to represent many, many materials. And what I'm doing with this guy is I'm shoving in that texture map that was derived from the photogrammetry that John Tojak did into both the base color as well as the emissive color. And then I'm driving the amount of that intensity of that emissive color using an ambient occlusion shader. So where there's areas that there's no occlusion, it gets a little bit more emissive. In areas where objects would be close and blocking the light, the emissive gets dropped down. So the end result actually gives me a lighting model that I think looks really, really cool, and it's kind of fun. Now, if you remember before in Journey to VR, we were doing a lot of stuff with the motion graphics toolkit, a lot of kind of mesh network things, building on and doing these fun effects. And a lot of those, I wanted to have a glowing effect happening. So like this little wireframe writing on here, I wanted that to actually be kind of a glowing light wireframe effect. And this is something that you can do with Arnold very efficiently. And now that Arnold 5 is out, things like mesh lights look even better than they did before with lower samples. So that's really awesome. They're much faster to render. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a Arnold mesh light from that piece of geometry. So we'll go ahead and we'll grab that guy. We'll jump up to the Arnold menu in the rendering drop down, and we'll go ahead and we'll tell it to become a simple mesh light. So now that we've done that, if we kind of click off that guy, you can see that it's now got this sort of wireframe red outline for that. And if we just spool up a quick preview rendered using the Arnold render view, you can see that it kind of comes in here, and we're not getting a ton of light in this scene yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump over to this guy's shader for that light, and we're going to start modifying a few of the attributes on that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and let me just shrink that window down a bit and tidy this up a little here. I'm going to turn off the normalize. That's mainly because this is changing shape drastically, so I don't want to have that normalize turned on. And as soon as I do that, you can see that it starts to add a little bit of light into our scene. And even with these very low samples, you still get a nice, relatively grain-free look at what's going on with this guy. And I'm just going to crank that exposure up to something like 2 to really start to blast a lot of light into my scene. And that looks pretty cool. Now to finish this off, what I want to do is I'm actually going to go back to this guy, and I want to be able to see the actual geometry inside of that. So I'm going to turn on show original mesh also. So now if we kind of relaunch this render back here, you can see that we get this nice little white wireframe effect happening that's adding a lot of light into that scene. And as this starts to refine, you'll see that it's going to be relatively noise-free or grain-free as it starts to do this progressive refinement. And that's really what Arnold 5 is all about, is getting this amazing look right out of the box. You know, I'm not fidgeting around with a bunch of dials. I have a few things to adjust, my sample counts, and that's basically it. You know, if I wanted to make the light look a little bit better, we could crank that sample count up to something like 5, and it's going to look really, really solid. So the next thing that I want to talk to you guys about is the new VR camera. And this is really, really easy to work with. So what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and just create a simple camera inside of Maya. That kind of gets dropped in at my origin. And what I want to do is I want to position this where I want to generate that 360-degree render from. Like, where is the center point of that 360-degree render going to be? And I'm going to kind of position it sort of right over here. That looks pretty good. And to make this into a VR camera, all you have to do is go to the camera shape that you have currently selected and scroll down here to the Arnold tab, expand that guy out, and just switch the camera type. So instead of being perspective, we're going to jump this guy over to become a VR camera. So this is really cool. When we do that, we get a lot of options for this VR camera. So what do we want it to be? A side-by-side, or in this example, I actually want it to be an over-under because I know that on YouTube, they want it to be an over-under for their stereo image. So YouTube over-under lat long is exactly what we want to get. So we'll just leave that set to be lat long. And then we have other options inside of here for things like the eye separation, as well as how we're going to handle the merging at the poles. Because if you remember from previous Journey to VR posts, we talked about the fact that when you look up, you don't want stereo because you're going to get this weird flipping at the poles, or when you look down, you're going to get this weird flipping. So the VR camera has the ability to handle that and sort of taper off the stereo effect as you start to look up at the poles. So if we just do another preview render of this guy, and we switch it over from our perp shape to our new camera that we just made, you can see just like that, we now have this over-under stereo camera. And just to overdrive the fact that it's stereo, I'm going to put the eye separation, instead of being 6.5 centimeters, we'll put this up to 100, and we'll re-render that guy out, and you're going to see that, you know, you really get that difference between the left eye and the right eye. Now, obviously, that's not going to work, right? Like, that would just be way too much eye separation, but I just wanted to overdrive the point that this is creating a stereo pair in an over-under layout. So pretty straightforward. So we could just drop that guy back down to 6.5 and go ahead and launch off our renders. And that was basically what I did to get to the end effect. So let's just jump over to YouTube, and I'll show you what the final renders ended up looking like. And we'll just hit play on this guy. So I've got these cool motion graphics, kind of Mesh Networks wiping in here, this nice little voxelized effect. And then as it kind of transitions around, you can kind of explore the room and check out all this cool photogrammetry. You kind of come back over on this side, and here comes that cool little wiping effect and these nice little shader effects using those mesh lights. And then obviously what we have here is that in-cloth simulation, the shader being driven by the audio node and coming out of the Mesh network, as well as this kind of fun little plexus effect that's being tied into that audio spectrum. And that was basically it. So obviously you can view this really nicely. This is on YouTube, or if you wanted to, you could take the same YouTube experience and put it onto your phone. Now, if you are going to view it on a mobile device, make sure that you get the YouTube app and you watch it on the YouTube app. The reason you want to do that is because the YouTube app actually has the ability then to, let's just play this guy back. It has the ability to pick up the positional information that the phone supplies, as well as the ability to do this, you know, kind of stuff like if you wanted to get to the version that's going to look good inside of your VR glasses. So that was basically it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you've been taking the time to check out Journey to VR, I really appreciate it. We've been having so much fun doing it along the way. We've shared lots of great articles, as well as mini demos inside of Max, Maya, and Unreal. And please take the time to go check out the finished rendered versions of these guys on YouTube. Cheers, everybody. Take it easy.